I heard that.
Okay, further in this way. There we go. And go ahead, Carrie.
Okay. Jack Ensch, interview, take one.
All right.
Okay. Hang on just a sec. So I'm going to spin your monitor toward me.
Oh, yeah.
So your phone is off?
Yes, ma'am.
Jack, is your phone off?
It will be.
And Jack, you have water there. Carrie put it next to you.
Okay.
We don't have any whiskey, so.
Whiskey. I think I'll start with the wet down here.
And if you want, he can put it in the center crack of the couch there, right? Is that
You can put it on the floor,
I'll put it on the floor.
wherever is convenient to you.
Is it out of the way?
Yeah, that's good. And let me just adjust this back. Okay, so you're looking at Patrick
Mm-hmm.
the whole time.
Hello, Patrick.
Hi.
Morning.
It's great to have you back. We really enjoyed being on Midway.
Oh, good.
That was
Yes.
great. By the way, the drone footage was fantastic.
Was it?
Really great.
Good.
I'll send you some clips so you
Okay.
can take a look. So as I just said, this is really a conversation.
Okay.
And there's nothing to perform about. At any point, if you're not comfortable with something, move right on or whatever.
Okay.
But I don't think we'll even, I think for myself, as I said, this project is different from a lot of the projects that probably most of them have been done in the sense that this project is for the military to learn from what all of you went through together. And I think your perspective as a late shoot down is actually particularly viable in terms of the range. You know, we interviewed Ed Alvarez and all the way down to, I think Ted Treble was the one who was the least.
Yeah, Ted and I are contemporaries. Actually, we were in sister squadrons on the Midway, and I was shot down on the 23rd of August, and I think he joined us a couple days later, I think, something like that. So Ted and I went through our original F4 training together, as a matter of fact, back in 1966. So I've known Ted for a long time, and we're still in contact.
So I want a little disclaimer. I've got a little bit of an asthmatic thing in my lungs, so if I have to cough and I can't control it for any reason, I'll keep drinking warm liquids and it should be fine. But I'll let you know. I'll just stop this for a second.
I have this early morning congestion too. So
yeah. One of the things that I think that people like yourself and Ted can give us is a perspective. We sort of, over the course of this, have charted the growth of the, I gotta make sure I don't use my hand. We've kind of charted the growth and development from the very first days when Bob Shoemaker was in the cell with, who was it, Carrie, who knew about the tap code from Korea? Smitty Harris.
Oh yeah, Smitty.
Where they were talking and saying, we need a way to communicate. And Smitty said, well, I was hearing this sergeant next to me at a luncheon at a survival training in Korea. And he was talking about they would use this to tap on the pipes between concentration camps. And that was one of the original stories we heard. So from the very early inception of some of the things that the POWs developed to fight the battle behind bars, to communicate with each other, to unify and solidify. And now I think with your perspective, we get a chance to see, we sort of get to bookend this whole experience, because as a late shoot down, you're gonna see things that perhaps those who were there for years just actually didn't even notice about themselves, the way they had changed or what had happened or anything. So let's start off with, we've covered a lot of your military experience on the Midway, but I want to kind of, for the formal interview, kind of get, first off, let's start with your name and rank upon retirement, and a little bit about yourself from a military standpoint. What brought you to the military?
Okay, well, my given name John, but I go by Jack. I was Jack before I ever got back out of the hospital. The neighbor lady started calling me Jack, and that was it. But Jack Ensch, I retired as a Navy captain after a little over 30 years of service in the Navy, and how I got started was I was getting ready to graduate from Illinois State University in 1964, and late 1964. I was stupid study. No, I laid out for a couple of semesters to make money to finish up because I was putting myself through school. My father was dead, and my mother still had two. My brother and my younger sister were still living at home with her in high school and grade school. So I put myself through college, and I met some Navy aviator recruiters. They had a table set up in the student union, and they were in their whites and their fancy gold wings, and they were talking about the excitement and all this stuff about naval aviation. And Kathy and I actually had met at college, and she graduated in June of '64. We started together, and then I laid out so I had another semester to go before I got my degree. But we were married when she graduated. So we were married at that time, and I came home from a class that day, and I said, hey, I was talking to these Navy guys down there, and I said, this is pretty exciting. Look at, I said, we're footloose and fancy free here right now. We don't have any kids or anything. And she was a teacher, and and I was studying to be a teacher. I was on the wrestling team, and my career path, I thought, was going to be a high school English teacher. I was an English literature major and a psychology minor, and I was on a wrestling team. So I thought I was going to go be a high school teacher and a wrestling coach. And so we talked about, what these guys were talking about. And I had a couple of guys that I knew, a couple of my college buddies who had graduated a year before me. And they had gone through aviation training at AOCS, Aviation Candidate Officer School. And they'd come back after they got their commissions, and I'd talk to them too. But then these guys were talking to me, well, this is this, that, and this. Wow, boy, that sounds pretty exciting. So I said, hey, Kathy, what do you think? I said, hell, it's just, 4 years. And, we'll get the heck out of the cornfields of Illinois, and we'll get to see a little bit of the country and maybe a little bit of the world. And then, we'll come back. And so, she was always supportive. And she said, yeah, well, that sounds good. Let's, sign up, see if you qualify. So I took the exam and everything, qualified. And so when I finished my fall semester, I signed up and I was in the first class of 1965 at Pensacola, AOCS class. Went through AOCS class there, was commissioned in May, I think, of 1965, and started flight training. And in the meantime, we had started our family, and our oldest daughter was actually born there in Pensacola while I was going through flight training. And so went through the flight training and the NFO training, Rio training, and got out to Miramar. Went through F4 training and joined my first squadron in July of 1966 on a Coral Sea VF-21. did 2 cruises to Vietnam, came back, and then I got orders to shore duty at NAS Protection River, Maryland, Pax River, where I was the aide to the admiral there, who was in charge of the test center. And of course, I was commissioned as you all are out of ROTC or Navy Aviation Candidate School into the reserves. So you have to apply then if you want a regular commission. And I said, Kathy and I both said, this is, we kind of liked it. And I fell in love with the flying end of it. And so I applied for a regular commission, was accepted, and as the saying goes, the rest is history. We just stayed in the Navy for the 30 plus years and had a wonderful life.
Beautiful job. Let me ask you, you flew how many? 280?
285. Well, 284 and a half. I didn't finish that last one.
Combat missions.
Yeah.
As a family man in the military, flying combat missions over North Vietnam, how did you and Kathy address in your home life and talking together about the dangers of what you were undertaking?
Well, thinking back on it, I don't think we really addressed it sufficiently, because I didn't want to worry her. I didn't tell her that the near misses that I'd had over there over the years, because I was on my 4th cruise when I got shot down. So she knew that the war was going on and everything, but I didn't bring it home. I didn't talk about it that much in the family, because I just didn't want to upset her or get her worried, and also there's that, I think I said before, after you're so 100 missions or so, and you keep going, and you kind of get this feeling of invincibility, I guess, if you say, well, it's not going to happen to me. I'm bulletproof now. I'm past the danger stage, because they say most people get shot down within their first 10, 12 missions or something like that. Well, after you build up a lot, you think, well, maybe I've passed the point of, I know what I'm doing now. So we probably didn't address it that as well as we should have, because, she said, I didn't realize how much they were being shot at and the dangers, everything, because she was busy with 3 girls between the ages of 7 and 3, I think they were, when I was shot down. So she had her hands full, and I had my hands full, so to speak, over there. So she was running the household, and I was off doing my business. So we didn't, in retrospect, we probably didn't talk about it as much as we should have.
It's interesting. Of the former POWs that we've interviewed, only Jim Mulligan, who flew in Germany and in Korea, actually sat down with his wife, he and Louise, before he deployed, and actually had a full-on game plan. If I don't come back, this is what we agree you're going to do, where you're going to move, how we're going to.
Yeah.
And in retrospect now, Bill, would you mind tilting down just a little bit, give him a little more of a haircut on this guy?
On this guy,
Yeah.
okay.
And one of the things that, probably really affected you was, as you were taken into the Hanoi prison systems, is the cost of the years on these guys. I mean, it was very visible. In retrospect, and thinking about, for a young military audience right now, who's our career military, they potentially, maybe they have a desk job in San Diego somewhere, but maybe they're also due to ship out to fields of conflict anywhere in the world. Oh, I'll add one other caveat to this. We've been following the story of the wives, particularly through the core of the women who were involved in the National League.
Yeah, League of Wives.
And there was a transformation that was going on in the country and also in society at that time. But first began in some ways with those wives who were given the Navy handbook on how to be a good wife,
Yep.
and further their husband's career and everything else, and came out of the 50s with an idea of who they were, and suddenly their men were gone and they were raising these kids alone, and then their men were prisoners of war, and the government was saying, you know, be quiet, you should just be the quiet wives. And eventually what happened was a transformation in these women that was equal to, you know, many of the former POWs have talked about the respect and admiration they garnered as they learned how their wives fought. And so there was this growth going on in the feminine as well. And I think, if safe to say, coming out of the 50s, we had much more traditional role ideas in mind. And so there is a way in which the lack of that conversation with your spouse about the dangers of what you're, or the reality, let's say, because danger
Your
is,
reality, Jim.
yeah, the reality of what you're taking on together and making plans for it. In your experience now, looking back, talking to a young military audience, how would you recommend differently than what you did? What would you say to a young military audience about, you know, the nuts and bolts of these kinds of conversations and what they
Well, I would suggest to them that, unlike I did, to include their wives and their families more in on it, because getting back to that, I think I was influenced, and Kathy too. I guess we were influenced. We were coming into this in the mid '60s, and we were influenced by that idea that that there was almost like a separation between what you did as a military officer and your family. Your family was, wasn't integrated as much as it is today. And I remember the old joke about was saying that if the Navy wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you one when you came in. And so, I mean, that's a humorous way of putting it. But I think there was a little bit of truth behind that because of the tradition that had come through the Navy, dating back, back in the day, that the wife was an adjunct, but was not a part of your Navy life. But that's your, you just over here keep that separate, and you don't want them to influence either good or bad. How you're going to progress in the Navy. That concept, I think, was kind of underlying coming up through there, and it started changing there, and especially with Sybil Stockdale and the League of Wives that finally said, "Hey, wait a minute, we're gonna come through." So my suggestion or my advice to those coming up today was include your family in what you're doing, because I've learned, I maintain too today, that when you join the Navy or you join any service, it's not just you that's joining. It's a family affair, because the things that happen to you or your decisions, a lot of them have to be made, impact the family too. And in a lot of ways, I think, looking back on it, I think that the families like Kathy and all of the POW wives, I think it was more traumatic to them what was going on, because there's that unknown. We had never talked about it, so they could only just imagine what might be happening with me. Whereas, if for in our case, the POWs, we were on the scene, we knew what was happening to us, so they could only imagine. And sometimes listening to things that they heard, they could imagine things just being, completely out of context, what may be really happening. So I think including the wives and the families into what you might be experiencing, and is it very important? More so than just saying, well, don't worry about it. I'm going to be okay. And because stuff happens, and if they're not prepared for it and not at least aware of the possibilities, I think it's even more difficult on them then, because then the imagination can get out of hand, and they can imagine things that maybe not aren't really happening, but in their mind they might be.
Wonderful, wonderful. You spent many, many months, years even, at sea, living on carriers.
Mm-hmm.
And from going through the Midway, what is that? Oh, what is that? A carrier is a small city.
Mm-hmm.
It's a city floating out in the sea. One of the things that many of the POWs, former POWs, talk about is when that SAM air missile hits them and they float down, and as Ev said, for the first time in my life, I smelled Vietnam.
Yeah.
Like, suddenly it was a different world. And the Navy and you as a pilot were waging war from a distance.
Yep.
And probably months at sea, living in a small city that's got its own rules and everything else, even had its own way of insulating you.
Yep.
So, you hear that sound, Bill? There's like a.
I do not, no. What are you hearing?
Next time it happens,
I didn't hear
it's
anything.
like a creaking or something. Huh. Okay. So there is a way in which, if let's say if you're in the Army, if you're in the South Vietnam in the Army, the reality of war is, and what the reality of what you're engaged in is happening every day.
Yeah.
You know, the Marines who are on
Up close and personal.
up close and personal. This lack of conversation with, and I think it's so beautiful what you said, it's a family affair if you're part of the military. And I also think on the back end, when you need help to heal,
Mm-hmm.
laying those groundwork all the way from the beginning, like the League of Wives, they stepped up. They made themselves involved. They were not going to take a backseat to,
Mm-hmm.
to the fate of their husbands. So, and it made the relationship stronger. It made a lot of things over time. You know, as Paul Galante said, he came back and said to Grace, you know, so now I need to make my lunch. I'm hungry, and she goes, "Hey, Bozo, I don't do that anymore." Like there was a wake up all the way around. Like there was a shake up in society and everything else. But going back to the life on a ship, it is in a certain way like that 1950s, early 60s ideal that we're separated from, you know, like we are waging battle at a distance. Really our life in world is that we know is on the ship.
Yep.
Speak, if you will, sir, about, I'm not quite sure how to deconstruct this, but on the home front, someone who is elected a military career, who's elected to be a warrior, can better prepare themselves and their family members by sharing, you know, maybe not in gross detail, but sharing that we are involved in a risk together.
Yep.
And that means certain realities.
Yeah.
On the backside, when you're out at sea, you're in this world, are there ways in which you can better prepare yourself for the realities of what you're engaged in? That by engaging those realities, you become a more effective and a wiser and more prepared warrior.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are. In my case, my era, you know, it was, I think, just take for granted. Okay, you're going to go and you're going to do your job. We're going to be gone for 6 to 8 months, and we're going to be flying combat, and we prepare for that. You know, training at the squadron level, and then at the air wing level, and then the integration of the air wing with the ship operations and everything like that. So that preparation is, but on the home front, it's, okay, it's, on the road again. We're going on the road again, and there wasn't as much attention to detail, if you will, on that end of it. In my case, or in a lot of cases, I think in my era, of preparing the family for that, and that was a lack of foresight, I think, on the way we did it, and the I don't think the Navy itself really lent itself in those days to helping you do that, because it was, again, back the old, well, we didn't issue that wife and family, so you take care of that yourself, and you're going to be doing this. And so it's interesting. In my case, coming back from cruises, where not the last one where I was a POW, but just individual cruises where you're gone 6-8 months, you're pulled out of the family unit, and you're gone, head of the household, quote unquote, and you're gone. And the wife then takes over, and she's both mother and father. And in my case, I'd come back from a 6-month deployment, and I'd inject myself right back in where I was. Well, that's not true, because a lot of things happen in that 6 to 8 months. Those kids grew, it changes. You missed, certain key points in their life at that early age like that, and you come back, and I'd come back and say, okay, well, Daddy's home again. Okay, this is the way it's going to be. And Kathy would have to remind me, no, that's not the way we do it, Jack. They have, there are rules they have to follow, because I'd come back and I'm the benevolent father, and okay, there's nothing they could do wrong, because I'd been gone for 6 to 8 months, and I'm making up for time. Well, she'd been on scene, on the job the whole time I was gone, and so there were rules that these girls had to follow, and I couldn't just come inject myself back into the family unit again and take over where I left off, because things had changed. They had evolved a little bit while I was gone. So there were some kind of rules of engagement that I had to learn when I came back into the family unit that had changed since I was gone, So you had this, macho feeling that, well, I guess, I'm the dad and I'm going to come back and do this. Well, I learned a lesson there that, that doesn't necessarily work that well. So that's another thing I think that today's people could learn, was that you realize that when you're gone, things change, you change, and things behind you change, or these you left behind. Because those kids grow. They don't, when I left and 8 months later came back, well, each one of those girls was 8 months older. And in those early years, 8 months, is a lot can change, So lessons like that. And to me, when I think about that, it's hard for me to just fathom how the longtime POWs had gone for years. When they left, they were kids, were babes in arms, and come back and they're, young teenagers. And I can imagine the adjustments and the trauma of that. And of course, some of it was ended tragically because the families were estranged and everything like that. But I think those kind of things need to be thought of by the military families today. That it's got to be, you got to talk about things. You got to understand, not only on the side of going into combat, going to war, going to deploy, the dangers of, not even in peacetime, which I guess we haven't had peacetime really for many years, but I mean, just in normal operations on a carrier, it's a very dangerous position. And so I don't think you can talk about it too much. They need to be both sides, those that are deploying And those that are staying behind have to understand what the rules of engagement are, if you will, using a military term, rules of engagement. This is what it's going to be.
Beautiful, Jack. Beautiful. So, on that line, let's talk about, you were well into your combat career in Vietnam by the time you were shot down. But additionally, there was by the time you were shot down, Ed Alvarez would have been in almost 8 years. So,
Yeah.
talk to me, if you will, about, set the stage in a way for that when you went out on that fateful flight and were shot down. What did you know of the POWs? Had you seen Jerry Denton, Morse code, blinking, torture? Had you seen Dick Stratton, the exaggerated bow? Had you seen scenes from the Hanoi March or anything? What was the talk? What was the conversation or awareness shipside of what was going on there?
Yeah, I'd seen those things, and so I was aware of the torture that they had been subjected to, and that thing. But in retrospect, I don't think I paid that enough attention to that, because again, I get back to that idea that, well, that's not going to happen to me. Maybe it's a defense mechanism, or I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but something about, well, if I don't think about it, it can't happen, I guess. Also, I don't recall. I don't think the Navy or the services kept up with, I don't know how to put this, in my case, I don't recall ever, even though when Doug Hagdahl and the people came back and, they told in their debriefs what was going on. And for instance, the TAP code we talked about, I don't recall ever hearing anything about the TAP code in my Surrey training and preparing to go on that 72 cruise. I didn't know about the TAP code until I became a POW. Now, whether I was just not paying attention, but I don't think so. But I'm not sure why, we weren't told about that ahead of time. Unless it was one of these things. Well, that's close hold. That's we don't want it to get out and have somebody leak that this how our POWs are being communicating there, and the Vietnamese know about it. So that's something is always I've always wondered about. Why the hell didn't I know about TAP code before I became a POW? And certainly, I think that the intelligence people knew that how that was communicated, but sometimes information is held so tightly that the information you have doesn't do any good to the people who really need it. And I think they could have done a better job in that respect of preparing potential POWs there from when the war broke out again in '72 and on. So that, I guess I'm getting off track there, but things like that sometimes intelligence doesn't, it doesn't do any good if the people who really need it can't have it. And the same thing was true of a lot of the intelligence that we had about the enemy and what they knew about our tactics, and we those who are out then pointing into the spear were not allowed to have that information, when yet the guy sitting back in a dark room in the Pentagon who knows all this stuff, and you're out there where you could really use his information, but well, you can't have that because they're not cleared for that. Well, who should be more clear for it than the person who really needs the information? And that's something that a lot of us have always talked about, because it seemed like became a joke out there. Is come back from a mission and you'd get the crap shot out of you, shot at, and the old joke would come back and say, "Damn, it's almost like they knew we were coming." And now you hear rumors of stuff that, in fact, they did know we were coming, because Johnson and the administration were letting them know that, well, you clear that area out so that we don't kill any civilians, because we're going to come in here and bomb in that area. So, that kind of stuff that, learning that, 40 years later, maybe it wasn't a joke when we said, hey, they knew we were coming, because they really did. So, I guess I got off track there. I don't know.
Not at all, not at all. Okay, so in the counter prison systems, there was a core sense among the POWs that eventually they would get out of there. That on some level, they realized they were a valuable asset to the North Vietnamese, and shy of something catastrophic, that there was a basic plan afoot to bargain, to use them as a bargaining chip to get back. So at some point they would get home. And many of them said that's why they felt it was harder on their wives, because they knew they were going to survive. For their wives, they didn't know. For you on the ships and running the missions, what was your feeling? Was it similar? In the Hanoi prison systems, they basically felt on the ground, we're going to get out of here. When you thought about the POWs, or when you heard about the POWs or anything else, was your feeling that these guys were going to come home at some point, or that they were lost in the war?
No, I think I did. I think most of us felt that we're going to get our shipmates back, and that was part of the idea that why we're out there doing it, Well, after so many years, going into 72, my God, we've been out there, and it was the same old, it was, what's the movie, The Groundhog Day, over and over. You keep doing the same thing, but you don't see any results, because they keep moving the bomb line. Oh, you can bomb there, but now you can't. No, you can't do this. And so, it was the war was managed terribly from the, it was like McNamara was still turning out Model Ts, for crying out loud, metrics and that kind of stuff. The war wasn't run from a military standpoint. It was run from a corporate, he was a bean counter, so to speak. And that was frustrating for us, because we, early on in the war, in 64, 65, there we saw surface-to-air missile batteries being built, and we were not allowed to bomb them, because might be Russian people in there that were helping them. So that kind of thing was, to us, it made no sense. What the hell? We're in war, and we're not. The old somebody said that fighting a war with one hand tied behind your back, and that's the way we felt. And so many of our shipmates were POWs because of that very thing. So part of our mission out there was not only to conduct the war, such as it was, and so poorly managed, but also was to get our fellow POWs back and return them. So we had a feeling that, yeah, we're gonna get them back, and not thinking that some of us were going to join them before we got them back. But yeah, we had that feeling that we're going to get these guys back, and that's one of the reasons why we're out there, because we lost so many of our shipmates who were either KIA or MIA, or we knew that they were POWs. So we were fighting as much for them as we were this lost cause of a war that was farkled up from the very start by politicians.
So let's move forward to the events leading up to your shoot down. And if you would kind of set the stage for us. You've already flown 284. Yeah, we'll wait till the motorcycle gets through. You've already flown 284 combat missions. Also, let's talk a little bit about your work. You fly as an RIO and what that entails. So you've talked about it on the Midway, but I just to draw it in here a little bit.
Okay, well, as I mentioned before, the Phantom was designed as a two crew aircraft. I mean, pilot and the Rio radar intercept officer, which in the back seat, that's where we operated the radar. We operated the electronic countermeasures equipment we also chaff and disrupting the radar, surface-to-air missile radars and the AAA radars. Try to jam those in a way so that they would break their tracking. And also operate the radios back and forth between the various channels that you were up going on your missions, everything. So it was a teamwork effort in an F-4. It was not just a single pilot. So you divided up your responsibilities, and of course the pilot was in charge of taking off and landing and maneuvering the aircraft. But you in the back seat, you were an adjunct to him to help out. As a matter of fact, lookout doctrine. Looking around, making sure. I forgot what the percentage, but it was a very high percentage of the first air-to-air contacts visually made in the Vietnam War were made by the Rio and not the pilot. So you got that second set of eyes that he might be looking that way and you're looking this way. He can't look both ways at the same time. And lo and behold, the Rio would be the one that picked up the threat on the other side when he might have been looking at the other side. So that second set of eyes was very valuable as far as in a combat situation. So that was kind of the division of responsibilities, if you will, between the two cockpits. And also coming on board, you assist the pilot with. He's controlling the airplane to land, but you're watching the meatball too, and you're saying, hey, we're getting a little low. You might give him a little heads up because he might be scanning someplace else and not realizing that the ball's getting a little bit low. So you could remind him another set of eyes there, and so that kind of thing is that was the value of having the second set of eyes in the back seat of a Phantom.
So, time came for deployment that day. It was a normal mission for you. Were you getting close to the end of your tour at this point?
I was, I was due to roll out of the squadron, I think, probably about November of that year, I guess, or November, December, yeah, because I was coming up on my 2-year tour, and which a little sidebar here. After I was shot down, I'll just say this while I think about it. It shows you how the the system works, the Navy bureaucracy. After I was shot down in August, sometime in September, of course, the war then was heating up, and we had to heat it up. And I think it was a month or two after I was shot down, my squadron got a message from BUPERS, the Bureau of Naval Personnel, which write orders, and they're the ones that transfer people to like that. And so the Bureau of Personnel handles all orders and transferring to and from commands. And my skipper Deacon Cannell got a message from Bupers saying that Lieutenant John Ensch has been extended for the duration of the conflict, and he would not be, So my orders out of the squadron had been canceled. I was extended in the squadron until the end of the deployment. And Deacon, great leader, and he sent an email back to Bupers because I'm already now by this time I'm still MIA. They hadn't declared whether I was a POW or KIA yet, and so he sends a scathing message back to Bupers in so many words. I'm sure he didn't use anything out of Navy protocol, but in so many words told them to get their head out of their where. If you were doing your job, you'd realize that he was shot down 2 months ago, and we don't know whether he's alive or dead, and you're extending him on cruise. Get your shit together. And so, anyway, I'm sorry I got diverted there, but typical Bupers, bureaucratic system, not knowing where the hell everybody is. No, we taken off on the mission. That's where I was. Yeah. It was a typical mission. We were 3 months prior to that when I was flying with Muggs McEwen. It was the day that we on a MiG cap, a MiG Combat Air Patrol mission, where we would put ourselves between the threat of the MiGs and the strike that's going in with the Alpha strike with the bombers, and keep them off of the bombers while they could do their job. We had the success and shot down a couple of MiGs that day, and in the meantime, Muggs transferred out of the squadron, and his replacement pilot, Mike Doo Doyle, was his replacement. I started flying with him then. And lo and behold, we were on the same type of mission. We were going on a MiG cap mission, and we were flying in the same airplane that Muggs and I had shot the MiGs down in. And so, it was, been here, done this before, So it was just a normal brief, and figured out where our cap station was going to be, where you would place yourself between the MiG threat and where the strike was going, and intercept any MiGs that might be trying to get to the bombers. So it was, business as usual, if you will. And until we got across the beach and got taken under fire by the surface-to-air missiles, and then the mission suddenly changed. It was a mission. The mission was survival, not we were on the defense, not the offense. So
Describe, if you will, the events when that SAM, what was going on when the SAM missile hit you, and what happened after that?
Well, we had just crossed the beach, gone feet dry, and we're proceeding across. In retrospect, it was the wrong route to take that they had given us. I mean, again, mission planning was not up to snuff in that particular case. But we were crossing, we were going to race across an open space. Usually you try to hide behind the karst ridges and stuff like that. But our station was across the opening, Ninh Biem Nam Dinh area, just south of Hanoi. And then we were going to be placed up against the karst ridges over there, so we could shield ourselves from the SAM missile radars, and be in a position to get any MiGs that might be coming down from Hanoi. Well, as we crossed the beach, went feet wet, feet dry, and started racing toward our cap station, we were exposed, and we were taken under fire by a number of surface-to-air batteries. I remember we started maneuvering against them, And if you could see if you could see the missile, you could defeat it. It was just like you were dogfighting it. We had a certain maneuver, and when it got to a certain point, you could do a turn into it, and such that it couldn't make that turn, and it would go past you. And so there were a number of we actually defeated a couple of the missiles. I know that because I was watching one of them that we had just defeated going behind us. I was holding up like this in a handhold against the G's we were pulling and operating the chaff down here on the console. And I watched one of the missiles going by. And one that we didn't detect, went off right over the cockpits. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in my cockpit with the shards and the shrapnel from the missile.
Sorry, Jack. We got a lawnmower going, and this is such an important part of your story. Why don't we take a little bathroom break for you, Gary, and we'll cut for a second. And that way, it'll give this guy a chance to finish cutting the.
It's a very busy neighborhood, unfortunately.
Are you gonna beep the
Yeah, I'm
sound?
gonna beep sound. Hold on one second.
I'm sorry,